and black plays c5, also known as the Sicilian Defense. Okay, so white plays 1e4, controlling the center, pushing the center pawn, and black plays c5, also known as the Sicilian Defense, which we are going to dive in. Now, if you are a beginner, many coaches would advise you to simply copy white's move by playing the move e5, and it definitely makes a lot of sense. You're also controlling the center, you're opening up the bishop, you're opening up the queen. Now, this is a very normal way to play the position. But c5 is more of an aggressive way to play. After c5, what's happening? Now you are basically pushing your flank or the side pawn to control the d4, which is a center square. In chess, you have 4 center square. So black is pushing the side pawn to control the center square, and also at the same time trying to open up the queen. After c5, now white is having majorly many options to continue this position. White can play the move d3. White can play the move d4, also known as the Smith-Morra gambit. White can play the move c3, the Alapin. White can play knight to c3. And the main move is to play the move knight to f3. Now after knight f3, white's idea is very straightforward. White wants to strike in the center with the pawn d4. And now after knight f3, black is having majorly 3 options to continue the position. Black can play the move e6, black can play the move d6, or black can play the move knight to c6. Now in this video, we are going to dive in the move d6. But just to give you a quick overview, the idea of e6 is to play the move d5, as the e6 pawn controls the d5 square. The idea of playing the move knight c6 is very logical. You're controlling the d4 square and also the e5 square. And the idea of d6, which we are going to dive in here, is the pawn on d6 controls the e5 square and also protects the pawn on c5, which is a very logical move. After d6, white plays the move d4, striking in the center. Black takes the pawn and white recaptures the pawn with the knight. And now we have this position where what white is claiming here is white is having a pawn and the knight to control the 4 center square. Whereas what black is claiming here is black has sort of traded his side pawn for white's central pawn on d2. So basically black is having 2 pawns in the center, whereas white is only having 1. So you see, this is what black is banging on, and it's a pretty good idea. So after knight cross d4, now black plays knight to f6. White develops the knight to c3, defending the pawn on e4. And now, once again, black is having tons of options to continue this position, which we are going to dive today, covering all the variations. So after knight c3, black is having majorly many options, which is g6, e6, knight c6, and a6. These 4 are the main moves. Now, starting with the move g6, also known as the Sicilian Defense open dragon variation. After g6, just giving you a good idea about what's the main plan of both the sides. After g6, white puts the bishop on e3, black develops the bishop to g7, white pushes the pawn to f3, black castles up, white puts the queen on d2, black develops the knight, and white castles on the long side or on the queen side. So basically, black has put the king on the king side, whereas white has put the king on the queen side. And basically, black's idea is to arrange the pieces on the queen side in such a way to attack the white king. And white's idea is also pretty straightforward. White just needs to push the pawns on the king side, that's it. That's the bishop d7, g4, h4. So what's the idea of even h4, g4? Basically, black has played the move g6, which has already created a hook. So white's idea is pretty simple. Get the move h5, take on g6, get the bishop on h6, take the bishop on g7, get the queen in, and simply checkmate the black king. So this is the idea of white. And black's idea is to simply arrange the pieces on the queen side. You can play a6, b5, rook b8, b4, and that's how black continues the position. Now this is exactly how you play with the move g6, or you can say the dragon variation. Now another move which I want to discuss here is the move knight c6. Now after knight c6, white plays the move bishop g5. Debating, if black plays the move g6 in this position, white wants to simply chop off the knight on f6. Because after e cross f6, white is saying that black is simply having a bad pawn structure. And that's indeed true, though black is having the bishop pair advantage, which makes this position even fun to play. So that's the reason, instead of g6, black plays the move e6. So basically after e6, what's the idea? What's the main plan of both the sides? White once again plays queen d2 with the same idea of castling on the long side. And now, majorly, white's idea is to simply take the knight on f6. And even if your queen would have been on d8, you still capture with the g pawn. Because you need to have this particular pawn structure. So what white is saying here is, white is not really having the dark square bishop, and black is having the bishop pair advantage. But white is saying that you can't really go to castle on the king side because your king side is already a bit weak. And white's idea is to play the move f4, f5, striking in the center. You can't also castle on the queen side because you're not really having the c pawn, which makes your queen side still a bit vulnerable. So let's say after g f6, white pushes f4. And you say, okay, what's the idea of black? Black's idea is generally to put the queen on e5 and use this bishop on f8 to put the bishop on h6, a good diagonal for the bishop. And that's one of the ideas for how black should play the position, which makes this very fun variation once again to play this with the black pieces. Another move here is e6. Now you can ask me why you have not given the move e5, which also looks a very tempting move in this position. Why not playing the move e5, attacking the knight on d4? So basically the main drawback after e5 here is white gives a check on b5 with the bishop. And the main point here is, let's say if black tries to block the check with knight d7, this allows white to jump in with knight f5. If the pawn would have been on e6, it covers the f5 square. And after knight f5, the d6 pawn is very soft. Let's say if black plays bishop d7, white can simply chop off the bishop and still play the move knight f5, making d6 a very weak pawn. And that's the main idea. If you want to play the move e5, you need to first play the move a6 to cover the b5 square, and then you can go for playing the move e5. Now, so that's the reason e6 is one of the main moves in this position at the place of playing the move e5. And now after e6, the drawback here is the bishop on c8 is simply blocked, which allows white to play the move g4, which is also known as the Keres attack. And after g4, it's very fun to play and one of the most dangerous aggressive system for white. White wants to play g4, g5. And at the first glance for any beginner, even for me, it looks like white is simply breaking the fundamental. At the place of developing the pieces, white is simply pushing the pawn on the king side, which makes his king weak whenever he castles on the king side. That's indeed true. But white's, as you have guys already discussed so far, we castle on the queen side. That's the whole idea. White castles on the queen side. So let's say after g4, a6, white pushes the pawn, kicking the knight back. And you see, black's all pieces are on the 7th rank, whereas white is playing all over the board. Bishop comes out with e3, queen comes out to d2, castle up on the long side, and simply expanding on the king side. And now, basically, black is sort of forced to castle on the king side. You can't really go for castling on the queen side because black is not really having the c pawn, which makes the queen side a bit vulnerable. So you have to castle on the king side, and now it's a good opportunity for white to already expand on the king side, and black expands on the queen side, which makes this opening very double-edged. So that's exactly why you play the move e6, and that's exactly what happens after e6. Now coming to the main move, which is a6, also known as the Sicilian Defense knight-off variation, played by all the top players. Hikaru Nakamura, Maxim is one of the experts in this particular variation, even Anish Giri. So after a6, it simply covers the b5 square, and now black is absolutely preparing to play the move e5. White plays f3, you play e5, kicking the knight back, and now once again going to give you idea of how both the sides plays. Bishop comes out to e7, bishop e3, black castles up, white puts the queen to d2, bishop e6, castles up, black develops the knight to d7, and white starts with g4, expanding on the king side, attacking on the king side, whereas black expands on the queen side with b5, with the idea of b4 coming up, rook c8 coming up, knight c5, maybe knight b6, knight c4. There are many ideas, and this is exactly why this opening is so much fun to play. Both the sides are having their own plans to play this position, which makes this position very double-edged. And if you are an aggressive player, if you like to play double-edged double sword chess. It's one of the best opening, very aggressive opening to play with the black pieces as well. So in this video, we have basically covered what exactly happens. Like after c5, knight f3, black is having majorly three options. In today's video, I have covered given you some complete overview about the move d6. In the next video, I'm also gonna cover all the remaining options with e6 and knight c6 as well. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. You guys must have learned like mostly everything about Sicilian knight off, which is one of the main variations to play with the black pieces. And if you want to master this opening, make sure to watch out the games of top players, and eventually your understanding will simply improve, and eventually you'll be master of the Sicilian defense. So I hope you guys have learned something new today. If you did, make sure to like, share, and smash that subscribe button. I'm gonna come up with these more exciting videos like this. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.